Hey everyone, this is HFY Galactic Empire Fall. Stories forged by humans, not machines. Because HFY is our story. I'm Orion Thane. Subscribe and witness what comes next. The calibration strip on the edge of the conference table stopped halfway through its color cycle. It should have moved from blue to white in one smooth pass, matching the station clock and the room temperature controls. Instead, it held at pale violet for a second longer than it should have, then corrected itself so neatly that the delay almost disappeared. Director Sin Malik noticed it because he was already looking at the table. Not the center, not the empty chairs. The table's edge, where a thin paper agenda sat under his left hand, and the strip ran like a vein beneath the clear surface. The paper had shifted sometime during the session. One corner had folded upward. He pressed it flat with 2 fingers and left them there. Across from him, Lieutenant Mara Ivers was checking the seal on a transit case she had not opened once in the last 3 hours. She did not look at the strip. She checked the latch, then the second latch, then rested her palm on the hard black shell as if confirming its weight. The room was no longer full, but it still behaved as if it were. Translation halos remained suspended over empty seats. The wall display continued projecting name bands in a row across the far glass. Human delegation was still lit in white. So were the 7 council blocks. The system had not yet accepted that one side had already left. There was no noise from the corridor outside. That was unusual. Meetings at this level always produced motion afterward. Assistants with tablets, security teams repositioning, envoys sending urgent updates before the official summary went out. But the corridor beyond the glass was empty, as if someone had posted guards far enough away to keep the silence intact. Sun lifted the paper agenda and squared it with the table seam. Mara finally looked up. "They clear the hall," she said. Sun glanced at the door. "I assumed." She touched the transit case again. "Not just this hall." He looked at her then. "How wide?" She answered after a moment. Not because she needed to think, but because she preferred exact numbers to approximations. Ring 4 access restricted. 2 freight lifts held. Dock corridor at half movement. No public announcement. The translation halos above the empty seats blinked out one by one. Sun sat back. That was quick. Mara stood and crossed the wall console. Her boots made almost no sound on the floor, but Sun watched the slight flex in the floor panel seam as she passed. It dipped at the same place every time anyone heavier than station staff crossed there. A maintenance flaw. He had noticed it on arrival. He noticed it again now because he wanted the world to remain made of small, dependable faults. Mara placed 2 fingers against the console and waited. The console responded late. A line of text appeared, vanished, and then came back in station glyphs before resolving into trade common. She did not comment on the delay. She just read. They locked the session archive. By whose order? Executive Clerk Code. She paused, overridden by chamber authority. Sun smiled once without amusement. So they're not panicking. Mara turned her head slightly. No. He let the paper settle back onto the table. At the top, the printed title read Mutual Corridor Stabilization Framework. 11 pages to discuss shipping guarantees, border arbitration, escort limits, inspection rights, and emergency response timing across 3 contested sectors. A document assembled over 8 months, revised across 4 worlds, translated into 19 operational dialects. The human delegation had left on page 2, not stormed out, not argued, not made a final statement for the record. Senate closed his folder, stood, nodded to the chair, and walked to the door. Mara had picked up the black case and followed. The rest of the delegation, advisors, analysts, legal staff, had moved when Sun moved. Nothing abrupt. No visible disagreement. They had left as if the meeting had ended according to plan. Now the chamber systems were still catching up. Mara came back to the table. Transport wants to know if we're returning to the embassy annex. Not yet. They asked twice. That means someone asked them first. Mara did not answer. She set one hand on the back of the chair the human foreign minister had used and moved it inward by less than an inch, aligning it with the table. The chair had been left slightly back. Sun was not sure whether she corrected things out of habit or because misalignment irritated her more than uncertainty did. Probably both. He looked through the glass wall. The station hung against a field of hard stars and the dim curve of the moon below. Freight lines moved in patient arcs beyond the ring. Dock beacons blinked at fixed intervals. Out there, the ordinary work of the galaxy continued with no knowledge of what had just failed inside one sealed room. Or not failed, he thought. That would depend on how quickly the council understood what had happened. He reached for the water carafe at his end of the table, then stopped. It was empty. One of the station attendants had removed the glasses when the room cleared, but they had left the carafe. A thin line of condensation had dried halfway down its side, leaving a faint mineral track. Mara noticed his hand stop. She took the carafe, turned it once as if checking for damage, and set it down farther from the paper. Not a question, just one less object in his way. On the far side of the room, a service panel clicked softly and opened a fraction. No attendant emerged. After 2 seconds, it sealed again. Sun looked at it. Mara had already looked and returned her attention to the door. Someone's listening, Sun said. They've been listening since before the recess. More closely now. Yes. He stood and walked to the glass. His reflection floated over the stars, older than he felt until he moved. Then the lines in his face reorganized themselves into what aides often called patience and enemies often called delay. He smoothed the cuff of his jacket and looked not at the dock traffic outside, but at the layered reflections of a room superimposed on the black. 1 table, 9 chairs, 1 closed case, 1 folded corner of paper. A room built for visible engagement, now measuring the shape of absence. He said, they expected pressure. Mara came to stand 2 paces behind him. They got it. No. He touched the glass with 1 fingertip, more to mark the point than from any need to feel the cold. Pressure gives them something to answer, something to contain. This is different. Mara waited. She was good at that. Not filling silence. Not pretending she did not understand when she already did. He turned from the glass. The corridor guarantees were never the point. She gave the smallest possible nod. Of course they weren't. Not for the council blocks, who wanted inspection rights broad enough to cripple human shipping when useful. Not for the neutral worlds, who wanted stability without choosing sides. Not for Earth, which had endured 14 months of temporary enforcement zones that somehow only delayed its own convoys. The meeting had been about deciding whether the council could keep managing human restraint as if it were a resource that renewed automatically. The answer, at least for today, was no. A light on the table brightened. Incoming chamber request. Mara looked at Senator. He looked at the indicator for 3 breaths, then sat down again before accepting the channel. The display above the table formed a narrow standing frame rather than a full projection. Polite distance. Executive Office Protocol. Counselor Terrell appeared in muted tones. Feathers laid flat along his throat in a posture Sun had learned meant careful neutrality. Behind him, a different room. Smaller. Private. No aides visible. Director Malik. Counselor. Terrell inclined his head. I understand there may have been a procedural misunderstanding. Mara remained standing at Sen's right. Her hand rested lightly on the transit case. Sun folded his hands on the paper agenda. I don't think so. The chamber had not reached recess vote. Then the chamber should revise its sense of timing. A pause. Not long, but noticeable. Terrell's eyes shifted once, not off-screen but down, to whatever briefing line had just updated below his display. The council is prepared to continue in a narrower format if the current frame has become unproductive. Sun did not rescue him from the sentence. Terrell tried again. A smaller working session. No public minutes. Corridor security and freight timing only. The same terms. Adjusted terms. Defined by whom? By necessity. Sun let that sit between them. Behind the counselor, some mechanism in the private room altered the light temperature by a degree. The color against Terrell's face cooled, then stabilized. Sun watched the change and wondered whether the adjustment had been automatic or whether someone behind the wall had changed environmental settings because the counselor was overheating. He said, You had necessity 3 months ago. We had competing obligations. You still do. Terrell's throat feathers shifted once. Director Malik, the present situation is sensitive. No, Sun said quietly. It's legible. Mara's fingers tightened once on the case handle, then relaxed. Terrell looked at her for the first time. A mistake, though a small one. Security and logistics officers were often treated as furniture until they moved. Mara did not move. She just looked back at him with the expression of someone reading load tolerances on a bridge. The counselor returned to Sun. What outcome are you seeking? Sun reached to the paper and straightened that rising corner again. It had already started to lift. Counselor, he said, if I were seeking an outcome inside this room, I would still be in it. Terrell was silent. For a moment the station sounds became easier to hear. The distant air system in the ceiling, the low current in the wall display, a faint vibration underfoot from heavy docking operations somewhere deeper in the ring. Life support, power routing, freight alignment. The station remained busy. It simply no longer knew which movement mattered most. At last Terrell said, You understand what your departure signals? Yes. Others will read it as a breakdown. Others are free to read. That is not a responsible position. Sun looked at him for a long second, not hostile, not surprised, just measuring the sentence before deciding whether it deserved repair. Then he said, Responsibility is not attendance. Terrell inhaled, a soft movement but visible. The executive office requests that your delegation remain on station pending clarification. Mara spoke for the first time since the channel opened. Request recorded. Terrell's gaze shifted to her again. Lieutenant, is your delegation preparing to depart? No. He looked back to Sun, but the answer had already done its work. Not departing meant uncertainty. Uncertainty meant leverage was still possible. The counselor seized it at once. Then perhaps, he said, there is room to resolve this before external parties overinterpret the interruption. Sun almost smiled. There was not concern over the interrupted talks themselves. Concern over what the interruption would force other powers to recalculate. Insurance markets, convoy insurers, border monitors, independent trade houses, the defense ministries that pretended logistics were beneath them, right, until logistics moved first. The galaxy did not fear human anger nearly as much as it feared human withdrawal from the systems it quietly relied on. Sun said, You should speak with your shipping caucus. Terrell's stillness sharpened. Why? Because by now someone in Freight Metrics has noticed our corridor team suspended authorization keys. The counselor's face did not change enough for a stranger to see it. Sun saw it. Mara did too. Human merchant fleets crossed sectors the Council did not patrol well and maintained transit maps the Council had never fully replicated. Not because humans held secret technology, because they kept updating routes through debris fields, insurgent zones, customs black spots, storm corridors, and failing gates long after everyone else had decided those routes were too annoying to maintain. They did the tedious work. They shared enough of it to keep commerce moving. They did not need to advertise the value of that arrangement for it to become structural. If those keys were paused, freight didn't stop. Not immediately, but schedules blurred. Risk calculations widened. Insurers raised rates. Escorts delayed departure pending revised route confidence. Small worlds waiting on precision medical cargo or reactor parts or harvest stabilizers found that a 12-hour uncertainty was enough to reorder a week. Terrell knew all this, which is why, for the first time, he forgot to sound composed. You did that before the session? Sun did not answer directly. Counselor, the meeting was this morning. The decision was much earlier. Terrell went quiet. In the reflection on the glass wall behind Mara, Sun saw the service panel open a fraction again. Listening still. Good, he thought. Let them all listen. The counselor recovered some of his balance. That will be interpreted as coercive. It will be interpreted as administrative. You are weaponizing procedure. Sun leaned back in his chair. No, I am declining to lend stability to a structure that keeps billing us for it. The line held. Then Terrell did something honest enough to matter. He looked tired. Not weak. Not sympathetic. Just tired in the way officials looked when the model they had been using no longer fit the numbers arriving on their desk. What do you want us to change? He asked. Sun lowered his eyes to the paper in front of him. Page 2. Inspection reciprocity. Emergency override. Temporary enforcement review window. The point where the room had become useless. He slid the paper half an inch toward the display, letting Terrell see the section heading if he wished. You already know. Terrell did not deny it. The channel ended without formal closure. The standing frame vanished, leaving the table lit only by the narrow strip beneath the glass. This time the calibration band moved smoothly from violet to white. Mara exhaled through her nose. Not relief, just air. She checked the door, then the wall console, then the transit case. Sequence complete. Sun remained seated. After a while she said, he'll call shipping. Yes. They'll call finance. Yes. And then defense will pretend it was their idea to become interested. Sun looked up at her. Almost certainly. She adjusted the chair beside her by another fraction, though it was already straight. Do we stay here? For now. In the chamber? He glanced around the empty room. No. They need it more than we do. He stood, took the paper agenda, and folded it once. Not neatly enough to be kept, not carelessly enough to be discarded. He slipped it into his jacket pocket. Then he reached out and pressed 2 fingers to the table edge where the calibration strip passed beneath the clear surface. Steady now. That was the first sign that matters had begun. Mara picked up the black transit case. Together, they walked to the door. It opened at once, too quickly for an unattended system. Someone had been waiting on the other side to trigger it the moment they approached. The corridor beyond remained empty, but the air was cooler than before, and farther down the hall a cleaning cart had been positioned badly, half across a seam in the wall, as if rolled there in haste by someone trying to look unoccupied. Sun stepped through without looking at it. Mara looked once, and that was enough. They turned left toward the embassy annex lifts. Behind them, the conference room stayed bright and perfectly arranged, ready for the next round of words. Ahead of them, the station had already started to adjust. The lift indicator lit before they reached it. Not fully, just the outer ring, a soft white circle that should have remained dark until a request was registered. It pulsed once, then held steady as if reconsidering its own timing. Mara slowed by half a step. She didn't stop. She adjusted. Her grip on the transit case shifted slightly, fingers repositioning under the handle to keep the weight centered. Sun noticed it without looking directly. The case had mass beyond its size, but it wasn't the kind of weight that came from machinery. It was denser, quieter, administrative weight, authorization weight. They reached the lift. The doors opened without the usual pause. Inside, the panel already displayed Embassy Annex as a destination, though neither of them had selected it. Mara looked at the panel, then at Sun. He stepped in. She followed, turning just enough to scan the corridor again before the doors closed. The cleaning cart was gone. No sound of it being moved. The lift began to descend. No voice prompt. No motion indicator beyond the faint pressure shift underfoot. Sun placed one hand lightly against the wall, not for balance, but to feel the system. The vibration was cleaner than expected. The station had reallocated power. He could tell by the way the lift moved, less drift, tighter alignment at each transition point. They're optimizing routes, he said. Mara watched the panel. For traffic. For something they think will become traffic. She nodded once. The panel flickered. Not a failure. More like an overlay passing through before settling back to the standard display. For less than a second, the destination list expanded beyond normal parameters. Additional nodes appeared, labeled in council shorthand. Freight corridors, security zones, emergency reroutes. Then it returned to a single line, Embassy Annex. Mara tapped the panel once. No response. She tapped it again, lighter this time, as if testing sensitivity rather than input. Nothing changed. Locked, she asked. Not for us, Sun said. For them. The lift continued. Halfway down, it slowed for no scheduled reason. A fractional hesitation. It resumed. Mara shifted her stance slightly wider, compensating for the interruption before it fully registered. Sun kept his hand on the wall. The system had corrected itself too cleanly again. They're watching movement density, Mara said. Yes. Trying to predict shifts. Yes. She looked at him. We're part of the model. Only briefly. The lift reached the annex level and opened. The air was warmer here, though not by much. The embassy corridor carried a different tone, less polished, more lived in. Human modifications. Minor inefficiencies tolerated because they made the space easier to occupy. A wall panel near the entrance had been removed earlier in the week for maintenance. It hadn't been replaced yet. Inside, a cluster of cables ran in careful loops, color-coded and labeled in two systems: Council Standard and Human Shorthand. Mara glanced at the exposed panel as they passed. The blue cable, primary comm relay, was under slight tension. Not enough to strain, just enough to suggest increased load. She didn't comment. They entered the annex proper. Two aides stood near the central table. Both turned when Sun and Mara came in, but neither spoke immediately. One of them held a tablet at chest height, thumb resting against the edge without scrolling. Waiting, Sun removed the folded agenda from his jacket and placed it on the table without unfolding it. Status, he said. The aide with the tablet, a narrow-shouldered man named Aaron, lowered it slightly. Corridor keys suspended at 1400 station time, he said. Propagation complete across our networks. External recognition ongoing. How far? Aaron hesitated, then adjusted. Shipping houses flagged the change within 8 minutes. Independent carriers within 12. Council freight monitors are at 21 and counting. Mara set the transit case on the table, but did not open it. Insurance? She asked. The second aide, a woman with a short braid, pulled tight at the base of her neck, answered. Rates adjusted in 3 sectors. 2 more pending confirmation. Small carriers holding departure. Sun nodded. No urgency in the motion. Just acknowledgement. Communications? He asked. Aaron lifted the tablet again. Direct inquiries from 3 council blocks. 2 unofficial channels. 1 unclear origin. Unclear. No signature. No routing trace. It came through a maintenance band. Mara's eyes moved to the exposed wall panel behind them. Show it, Sun said. Aaron turned the tablet, placing it flat on the table. The message was brief. No greeting. No identifiers. You created a gap. That was all. Mara leaned slightly closer, not to read. She had already read, but to observe the formatting. The spacing between characters. The way the line sat within the frame. Not council, she said. No, Sun agreed. Not commercial either. No. Aaron looked between them. Do we respond? Sun considered the tablet for a moment. Then he slid an inch away from him. Not yet. The aide nodded and withdrew the display. Mara moved around the table, her attention shifting to the room itself. Chairs slightly out of alignment. 1 light panel dimmer than the rest. A stack of printed briefs near the far wall, edges not perfectly squared. She straightened 1 chair, adjusted the light panel by a degree, tapped the stack of papers until the edges aligned. The actions took less than a minute. The room felt different afterward. Not calmer, just more exact. Sun watched her, then looked back to Aaron. Anything from the chamber? Not directly. But, Aaron hesitated. But, they're not issuing a statement. Mara stopped moving. Nothing, she asked. Not yet. Sun leaned back slightly against the table. That's faster than I expected. Aaron frowned. Faster? Yes, Sun said. Silence means they're still calculating. A statement would mean they've chosen a narrative. The aide absorbed that. Mara returned to the table. What about movement? Station traffic increased in freight sectors, Aaron said. Passenger movement steady. Security presence redistributed. Toward us? No, Aaron said. Away. Mara exchanged a brief glance with Sun. They're containing elsewhere, she said. Or preparing to, he replied. The room held that for a moment. Then the braid-haired aide spoke again. There's another detail. Sun gestured for her to continue. Dock 7 delayed 2 departures. No official reason. Both were council flag shipments. Destination? Mara asked. Outer corridor. Zone C. Mara's hand rested lightly on the transit case. Inspection route, she said. Yes. Sun folded his arms loosely. They're already adjusting enforcement. Without announcement, the aide said. Of course. Mara looked at the table surface, then at the folded agenda. They're trying to compensate for the gap, she said. Yes. It won't hold. No. The statement wasn't dramatic. It was procedural. A gap created by withdrawal couldn't be filled by tightening existing controls. Not when those controls depended on the same systems that had just been withdrawn from. Aaron shifted his weight slightly. What's the next step? Sun didn't answer immediately. He reached out and unfolded the agenda, smoothing the crease with 2 fingers. The paper resisted at first, then lay flat again, though the fold line remained visible. Page 2. Inspection Reciprocity. Emergency Override. Temporary Enforcement Review Window. The same lines. The same failure point. He tapped the page once. Nothing, he said. Aaron blinked. Nothing. For now. Mara nodded, as if the answer had been expected. Aaron looked between them again. If we don't act, they will. They already are, Sun said. Then we observe. The aide opened his mouth to continue, then closed it. Mara picked up the transit case again. This time she opened it. Inside, the contents were arranged with precise spacing. Not tools, not weapons. Authorization modules. Compact, sealed units with no external markings beyond a single identifier strip. Each one represented a segment of corridor access, routing permissions, timing protocols, inspection bypasses, emergency reroute triggers. She removed one module and placed it on the table. It made almost no sound. Primary corridor node, she said. Sun looked at it, then at her. Status. Offline. Confirm. She nodded once. He considered the module, then pushed it slightly to the side. Leave it. Mara closed the case without returning the module. Aaron watched the exchange, then looked down at his tablet again. Another update. Sun waited. Independent carriers are requesting guidance. From us. Yes. Mara's gaze sharpened slightly. That's early, she said. They don't wait for council direction, Sun replied. No. Aaron looked up. Do we answer them? Sun picked up the module from the table and turned it once between his fingers. No, he said. Nothing. Aaron asked. Nothing. The aide nodded slowly, though the uncertainty remained in his posture. Mara adjusted her stance again, shifting her weight slightly to her left foot. A small movement, but consistent. She had been doing it since the lift. Something else, she said. Sun looked at her. The lift, she said. It slowed mid-descent. Yes. No scheduled stop. No. She considered that. They're running predictive models on internal movement. Likely. She nodded once. Then she walked to the exposed wall panel. Her fingers traced the edge of the blue cable without touching it. Load increased, she said. Yes. More than expected. Yes. She turned back to him. They're not just reacting, she said. They're preparing. Sun held her gaze for a moment. Then he set the module back on the table, not in its original position, but slightly offset from the paper. Good, he said. The word landed without emphasis. Mara closed the distance between them and the table. Aaron looked from one to the other. Good, he asked. Sun didn't explain. He just looked at the module, the paper, the alignment of objects on the table. Then he said, now we see what they choose to protect. The room settled into that. No alarms. No raised voices. Just the quiet shift of a system beginning to reveal its priorities. Outside, somewhere deeper in the station, a freight line adjusted its timing by a fraction. No one in the annex moved to check. They didn't need to. A thin line appeared on the wall display where no line should have been. Not a message, not even a full graphic, just a narrow, horizontal trace, faint enough to be missed if you weren't already watching the screen for something else. It held steady for half a second, then shifted 2 millimeters upward and stopped. Mara saw it first. She didn't point. She stepped closer. The rest of the display remained unchanged. Station feeds, freight summaries, low-priority alerts scrolling at the bottom edge. Nothing indicated a fault. The line did not blink or expand. It simply existed where no data should have been drawn. Aaron, she said. He was already turning the tablet toward the wall. I didn't push anything, he said. I know. The line moved again. This time it shifted downward, not returning to its original position, but settling slightly below it, as if testing alignment. Sun remained where he was, one hand resting lightly on the table edge near the authorization module. He didn't look at the screen immediately. He watched Mara watching it. How long? He asked. 3 seconds, she said. Stable. Yes. Aaron adjusted his tablet, cross-referencing local outputs with the wall feed. There's no input registered. No source flag. Of course not, Mara said. The braid-haired aide moved closer to the display, but stopped short of touching it. Could be a visual artifact. Mara didn't answer. The line shifted once more. Not up or down this time. It shortened. From both ends at once. A precise contraction, as if the display were correcting a measurement error that hadn't been declared. Sun stepped away from the table and walked toward the screen. He stopped 2 paces back. Isolate it, he said. Aaron's fingers moved across the tablet. Trying. The line held its new length, then faded slightly, then returned to full brightness. Not responding to filter, Aaron said. It's not tagged as an overlay. Then it's not an overlay, Mara said. The braid-haired aide glanced at her. What else would it be? Mara watched the line without blinking. Something the system isn't labeling yet. The room stayed quiet. The air system above them adjusted its output by a fraction, producing a soft change in pressure that barely registered. Sun noticed it because the calibration strip in the conference room had done something similar before correcting itself. Systems adapting. Before they understood what they were adapting to, the line on the wall shifted again. It didn't move position this time. It thickened, just enough to be seen without focusing. Aaron exhaled slowly. That's not a display error. No, Sun said. Mara stepped closer. Pause all non-essential feeds, she said. Aaron hesitated for a fraction of a second, then complied. The scrolling data at the bottom of the screen froze. Peripheral indicators dimmed. The room's visual noise reduced to a single field. The line remained, more visible now against the quiet background. What is it doing? The braid-haired aide asked. Mara didn't answer. She moved her hand toward the screen, stopping just short of contact. Not touching, just close enough to observe any reactive change. The line did not respond. It held its shape. Then, slowly, it shifted again. Not vertically, not horizontally. It rotated, a fraction of a degree. Barely perceptible, but enough. Aaron leaned forward. That's not how this interface works. No, Mara said again. Sun watched the movement, then shifted his gaze to the exposed wall panel behind them. The message, he said. Aaron looked back at him. You think it's related? Yes. Mara didn't turn from the screen. The maintenance band? Yes. Aaron frowned. But that came through comms. This is display. Same layer, Mara said. Not in standard architecture. Not standard. The line rotated back. Not to its original position. To a slightly different angle. As if aligning itself against something not visible on the screen. Sun stepped closer now, joining Mara. Map it, he said. Aaron hesitated again. Map what? The movement. Aaron nodded, hands moving faster now. Tracking position, rotation, change intervals. The braid-haired aide moved to his side, watching the data populate. It's consistent, she said after a moment. Not random. Of course it's not random, Mara said. Aaron's brow tightened. It's referencing something. What? The aide asked. Aaron shook his head. I don't know yet. The line shifted again. This time it split. Not cleanly. One end extended slightly while the other contracted, creating a subtle imbalance. Mara stepped back half a pace. Stop, she said. Aaron froze his inputs. The display held. The line did not disappear. It remained asymmetrical now. What do you see? Sun asked. Mara didn't answer immediately. Her eyes tracked the line, then moved to the edges of the screen, then back again. It's not drawing, she said. Then what is it doing? Aaron asked. She took a breath. Adjusting. To what? Mara turned her head slightly towards Sun. To us. The room held that. Aaron looked back at the screen, then at his tablet. That doesn't make sense, he said. Sun didn't respond. Mara stepped closer again, this time moving slightly to the side rather than directly in front of the display. The line shifted. Not immediately. A fraction of a second late. But it shifted, matching her position. Aaron's hand stopped over the tablet. It's tracking, he said. No, Mara said. She moved again. A small step to the left. The line adjusted. Again, a fraction late. Not tracking, she said, responding. The braid-haired aide looked between them. To what input? Mara's eyes remained on the screen. Presence. Aaron swallowed. That's not a defined parameter. It is now, Sin said quietly. The line held steady for a moment. Then it contracted again. Shorter. More focused. As if narrowing its field. Mara stepped back. The line expanded. Aaron's voice dropped. It's calibrating. Yes, Sin said. To what? Sin didn't answer. Mara moved once more, this time toward the exposed wall panel. The line shifted. Not toward her. Toward the panel. Aaron's eyes widened slightly. It's not just visual. No, Mara said. She crouched near the panel, examining the cables without touching them. The load spike, she said. Yes, Sin replied. Aaron looked at the tablet again. There's no signal path linking. There's now, Mara said. The braid-haired aide stepped back from the table, creating space without realizing she was doing it. The room felt different again. Not louder. Not brighter. Just aware. The line on the screen held its position, angled slightly toward the panel. Then, without warning, it vanished. Not faded. Not blinked out. Gone. Aaron exhaled sharply. What? The tablet in his hand vibrated once. He looked down. Another message. Same format. Same lack of origin. He turned it towards Sun. It was longer this time. You paused your routes. We adjusted ours. The spacing between the words was slightly uneven. Not enough to suggest error. Just enough to feel deliberate. Mara stood. The gap, she said. Yes, Sun replied. They're moving through it. Yes. Aaron looked between them. Who? Neither answered immediately. The braid-haired aide stepped closer to the table again, as if proximity might clarify the situation. Is this a threat? She asked. Mara shook her head. No. Then what? Mara looked at the empty space on the screen where the line had been. A response. Sin nodded once. Aaron swallowed again. To what? Sin picked up the authorization module from the table. To absence. The room settled into that. No alarms. No alerts. Just the quiet recognition that something had noticed the change and had begun to act within it. Mara closed the distance to the table and rested her hand lightly on the edge. Their timing, she said. Yes. Faster than the council. Yes. Aaron looked down at the tablet again, then back up. They're not waiting? No, Sun said. The braid-haired aide exhaled slowly. Then what do we do? Sun placed the module back on the table. Not in line with the paper. Not aligned with anything else. Just placed. We continue, he said. Mara nodded once. The exposed wall panel hummed softly as the load shifted again. This time, no one commented on it. The air vent above the annex table changed its pitch by a fraction. Not louder. Not quieter. Just narrower. As if the airflow had been redirected through a tighter channel. The sound held steady for a few seconds, then returned to its previous tone, though not exactly. Something in the rhythm stayed slightly off, like a breath taken too early and corrected too late. Mara tilted her head, just enough to register it. She didn't look up. Her attention remained on the table, where the authorization module sat slightly out of alignment with the paper. She reached out and rotated it half a degree, then stopped, leaving it not fully straight, not fully angled. Sin noticed. He didn't adjust it back. Across the room, Aaron was still holding the tablet, though the screen had dimmed. He hadn't locked it. The message remained visible, its uneven spacing unchanged. You pause your routes. We adjusted ours. No identifier. No signature. The braid-haired aide had moved closer to the exposed wall panel again, standing just far enough to avoid interfering with the cables. She watched the blue relay line, not for movement but for tension. It held steady now, but the tension had not fully released. Load stabilized, she said. For now, Mara replied. Sin stepped away from the table and walked toward the far wall, where a secondary display panel remained inactive. He placed his hand lightly against it. Cold, not just from the station environment. Unused. He left it there for a moment, then removed it. External feeds, he said. Aaron looked up. Still paused. Bring them back. Aaron hesitated. All of them. No, just freight telemetry. Aaron nodded and tapped the tablet. The wall display flickered once, then populated with a sparse network of lines, shipping routes, corridor markers, timing indicators. Normally dense, now thinner, with gaps where data should have been continuous. Mara stepped closer. "Zoom Sector C," she said. The display responded. Lines expanded, revealing finer detail. 2 routes showed deviation. Not rerouted, not redirected, just shifted, a few degrees off their standard paths. "Those weren't in the last update," Aaron said. "No," Mara agreed. "Unauthorized?" the aide asked. Mara shook her head. "Unregistered." Sun moved closer to the display. "How far off?" he asked. Aaron adjusted the view. "Within tolerance for drift, but consistent across both lines." "Same vector?" Sun asked. Aaron nodded slowly. "Yes." Mara leaned in slightly. "That's not drift." "No," Sun said. The lines held their positions on the screen, quiet and precise. "Not chaotic, not erratic, deliberate." The braid-haired aide stepped closer. "If it's not drift, then what?" Mara didn't answer immediately. She traced the line with her eyes, following its path across the sector boundary, through a region marked by intermittent debris fields and low-priority monitoring. "A route adjustment," she said finally. "By whom?" Aaron asked. Mara's gaze shifted slightly, not to the display, but to the space just beyond it. "Not the council," she said. "Not us," Aaron added. Sun folded his arms. "No," he said. The room fell quiet again. The vent above them returned briefly to its narrower pitch, then settled. Aaron looked back at the tablet, then at the display. "There's more." "Show it," Sun said. Aaron tapped the screen. A 3rd route appeared, fainter than the others. Less stable, but present. Mara's eyes narrowed slightly. "That one wasn't active before." "No," Aaron said. "It just came online." "Origin?" Sun asked. Aaron checked. No registered entry point. Destination? Also unclear. Mara stepped back half a pace. The 3 lines now formed a loose pattern. Not symmetrical, not aligned with standard corridor grids, but connected in a way that suggested intent. "They're building something," she said. Aaron looked at her. "A new route." Mara didn't respond. Sun watched the pattern for a long moment. Then he said no. Aaron frowned. "Then what?" Sun stepped closer to the display. "They're not building a route," he said. "They're testing one." The braid-haired aide shifted her weight. "Testing how?" Sun pointed, not touching the screen, just indicating. "See the deviation points," he said. "They're not random. They're probing boundaries." "Boundaries of what?" Aaron asked. "Control," Mara said. Aaron looked between them. "You mean enforcement zones?" "Yes," Sun said. Mara nodded. "They're moving just outside standard detection thresholds." Aaron's expression tightened. "That's precise." "Yes," Mara said. The 3rd line flickered slightly. Not disappearing, just adjusting. Its path corrected by a fraction, aligning more closely with the other 2. "Learning," Mara said. Aaron exhaled slowly. "From what?" Mara glanced at the exposed wall panel. "From the gap," she said. Sun didn't look away from the display. "They're using the absence of our routing data to map the edges of the system," he said. Aaron's voice dropped. "In real time?" "Yes." The braid-haired aide folded her arms. "That's not possible without access to." "It's possible," Mara said, "if you're not trying to see everything." The aide looked at her. "Then what are they seeing?" Mara's gaze returned to the display. "Just enough." The room held that. The 3 lines stabilized. Not perfectly, but enough to suggest that whatever was adjusting them had reached a temporary conclusion. Aaron tapped the tablet again. "There's a delay in council response." "How long?" Sun asked. "Longer than expected." Mara nodded once. "They're still modeling." "Yes." Aaron looked at the screen again. "They won't see this yet." "No," Sun said. "Then we have time." Sun didn't answer. Mara did. "Not much." Aaron swallowed. "What happens when they do see it?" Mara's expression didn't change. "They'll try to close it." "And can they?" Mara didn't respond. Sun turned from the display and walked back to the table. He picked up the folded agenda again, though he didn't open it this time. He just held it. "They'll try," he said. The braid-haired aide looked at him. And if they fail, Sun placed the paper back down. Then the system changes. Aaron's eyes moved between the table and the display. Without them, yes. The vent above shifted again. This time, no one looked up. Mara stepped away from the display and returned to the table. She picked up the authorization module, turned it once, then set it down in a new position, closer to the edge. Not aligned, not centered, just different. Aaron watched the movement. Is that deliberate? He asked. Mara didn't look at him. Yes. Sun glanced at the module, then at her. Good, he said. The word carried the same weight as before. Not approval, recognition. The braid-haired aide moved back to the wall panel, checking the cables again. No further load increase, she said. For now, Mara repeated. Aaron looked at the tablet again. No new messages, he said. They won't repeat, Sun said. Why not? Because they don't need to. Mara nodded slightly. They've already established presence. Aaron frowned. That's all it takes? Mara looked at him. No, she said. That's all it takes to begin. The room settled again. The display continued to show the 3 lines. Steady, adjusted, quiet. No alarms, no alerts. Just a system being observed and slowly redefined. Sun picked up the paper one last time and smoothed the fold again. The crease remained. He didn't try to remove it. Mara rested her hand lightly on the table edge. Aaron lowered the tablet slightly, though he didn't turn it off. The braid-haired aide stepped back from the panel, satisfied for the moment. No one spoke. Outside the annex, somewhere deeper in the station, a freight departure recalculated its timing by less than a second. Inside the room, no one moved to confirm it. They didn't need to. A fine dust particle drifted across the table and stopped. It didn't settle. It hung there, just above the surface, caught in a layer of still air that should have moved it toward the vent. For a moment it held perfectly in place, then shifted sideways a fraction, as if nudged by something too small to register. Mara noticed it. She didn't touch it. She lowered her gaze slightly, tracking the particle's position relative to the authorization module. The distance between them remained constant for a second, then changed by less than a millimeter. Airflow changed again, she said. Aaron glanced up, then followed her line of sight. I don't see. You won't, she said. The particle moved again, not toward the vent, toward the edge of the table. Sun stood near the display, watching the freight lines. The 3 routes remained stable, their slight deviations now holding as if they had always been there. No further adjustments, no corrections. They've stopped probing, Aaron said. For now, Sun replied. Mara straightened slightly. Or they've finished this phase. Aaron frowned. Phase of what? Mara didn't answer. She stepped around the table, moving toward the exposed wall panel again. Her hand hovered near the blue cable, then shifted to the adjacent line, yellow, lower bandwidth, usually reserved for maintenance diagnostics. It's carrying more than it should, she said. Aaron checked his tablet. Diagnostics traffic increased, but not flagged. Of course not, Mara said. Sun turned from the display. Show me. Aaron adjusted the tablet, pulling up the channel breakdown. Primary comms are stable, he said. Secondary lines are inconsistent. In what way? Sun asked. They're active, but not reporting usage. Mara nodded once. Hidden load. Aaron looked up. From where? Mara didn't answer immediately. She traced the cable path with her eyes, following it into the wall, then outward in her mind through the station's network layers. Same place as the message, she said. Aaron's expression tightened. The maintenance band? Yes. That's not supposed to carry. It's not supposed to, Mara said. Sun walked closer. They're using the gaps between systems, he said. Aaron looked at him. You mean the parts no one monitors directly? Yes. The braid-haired aide stepped closer again, arms folded. That's inefficient, she said. Mara shook her head. It's quiet. The dust particle reached the edge of the table and stopped again. It didn't fall. It held, balanced between surface tension and air movement. Aaron noticed it now. That's not normal, he said. No, Mara replied. Sun glanced at it briefly, then back to the cables. They're not just adjusting routes, he said. They're mapping response time. Aaron frowned. Response to what? Absence, Mara said. The words settled into the room. No emphasis, just placement. Aaron looked back at the tablet. Council channels are still quiet. They won't stay that way, the braid-haired aide said. No, Sun agreed. Mara stepped back from the panel. Timing, she asked. Aaron checked. Hard to say. They're still recalibrating. Or hesitating, Mara said. Same thing, Sun added. Aaron looked between them. What triggers their response? Mara glanced at the display again. The moment they understand what they're seeing. And if they don't? Aaron asked. Mara didn't answer. Sun did. They will. The dust particle shifted again. This time it dropped. Not straight down. It drifted slightly to the right before settling on the floor. Mara watched it land. Then she moved. Not toward the particle. Toward the table. She picked up the authorization module and held it for a moment, feeling its weight. Primary corridor still offline, she said. Yes, Sun replied. Secondary nodes? Pending. Mara nodded once. Aaron looked at her. If we bring them back online. We don't, she said. Why not? Mara set the module down again. Because they're watching for that. Aaron hesitated. Who? Mara looked at him. Not the council. Aaron swallowed. Sun returned to the display. Update, he said. Aaron tapped the tablet. The freight lines shifted. Not the 3 deviations. The surrounding traffic. Several routes had slowed. Not stopped. Just delayed. Carriers are adjusting, Aaron said. Based on what? The aide asked. Uncertainty, Sun said. Mara nodded. They're compensating for missing data. Aaron looked at the screen. That's going to ripple. Yes, Sun said. How far? Sun didn't answer immediately. He watched the pattern of delays spread outward from the initial deviations, small adjustments compounding into larger ones. Far enough, he said. The braid-haired aide exhaled slowly. And the council still hasn't responded. They're trying to contain it internally, Mara said. They can't, Aaron replied. No, Sun said. But they'll try. The room fell quiet again. The vent above them shifted once more, then stabilized. Aaron lowered the tablet slightly. There's something else, he said. Sun looked at him. Dock 7, Aaron continued. The delayed departures, they've resumed. On original routes? Mara asked. Aaron checked. No. Adjusted? Yes. Mara's gaze sharpened slightly. Show me. Aaron brought up the new paths. They didn't match the 3 deviations. But they weren't standard either. They curved slightly, avoiding the same regions the earlier lines had probed. They're reacting, Aaron said. Yes, Sun replied. To what they can't see, Mara added. The braid-haired aide stepped closer to the display. They're avoiding the gap, she said. Yes, Sun said. Aaron looked between them. But they don't know what's in it. They don't need to, Mara said. Why not? Mara turned her head slightly. Because it's not theirs. The room held that. Aaron swallowed again. So what happens now? He asked. Sun stepped back from the display. Now, he said, they choose. Choose what? What to protect? Mara nodded once. The braid-haired aide looked at the table, then at the module. And if they choose wrong? She asked. Sun didn't answer. Mara did. They already have. The dust particle on the floor remained still. No further movement. No further disturbance. Aaron looked at the tablet again. No new messages, he said. There won't be, Sun replied. Why not? Because they're no longer introducing themselves. Mara adjusted her stance again, shifting her weight slightly. They're operating, she said. Aaron's voice dropped. Within the system? Yes. Without permission? Mara didn't respond. She didn't need to. The display continued to show the adjusted routes. The delays. The subtle shifts in movement. No alarms. No warnings. Just change. Sun walked back to the table and placed both hands on its surface. He looked at the module, the paper, the slight misalignment Mara had left. Then he adjusted nothing. Mara watched him. Aaron waited. The braid-haired aide stood still near the panel. No one spoke. Outside, the station continued its work. Inside, the pattern had already begun to settle into something new. The light above the annex door dimmed by a fraction, then held. Not a flicker, not a failure, a steady reduction, as if the system had recalculated the required output and decided it could operate with less. Mara noticed it as she turned slightly toward the corridor. She didn't comment. She watched how long it held. 5 seconds. 10. It didn't correct. Behind her, the room remained arranged as it had been left. The module sat near the edge of the table, not aligned with anything. The folded paper rested beside it, crease still visible. The exposed panel hummed at a consistent pitch now, the earlier tension in the cable no longer present. Aaron stood near the display, tablet lowered but still active. The freight lines had stabilized into their adjusted forms. No new deviations, no further expansion, just a different pattern than before. The braid-haired aide had moved closer to the wall, no longer watching the cables, but the space around them. Listening, Sun remained at the table. He hadn't moved for several minutes. Not still in a rigid way, just settled. His hands rested lightly on the surface, fingers not quite touching the module. His gaze moved between the display and the table, but not in quick shifts. Measured, as if he were waiting for something that wouldn't announce itself. The light above the door remained dim. Mara stepped toward it. One pace, then another. She stopped just short of the threshold and looked up. No visible fault, no warning indicator, just less light than before. She reached out and pressed her fingers lightly against the wall beside the door panel. Warm, not overheating, but carrying more current than a passive lighting circuit should. Power redistributed, she said. Sun didn't look up. Yes. Aaron glanced toward the door. From where? Non-essential systems, Mara said. Aaron frowned. Lighting isn't. It is now, Sun said. The aide by the wall shifted slightly. To support what? Mara turned her head, just enough to answer. Something that requires precision. Aaron looked back at the display. The freight lines held steady. No visible change. But the timing indicators, the small markers that showed departure intervals, had tightened. Not faster. More exact. He leaned closer. They've reduced variance, he said. Sun nodded once. Across all routes? The aide asked. Aaron checked. Not all. Just the ones near the deviations. Mara stepped back from the door. The gap is stabilizing, she said. Yes, Sun replied. Aaron looked between them. Stabilizing into what? Mara didn't answer immediately. She returned to the table and picked up the module again. Held it. Turned it once. Then placed it down exactly where it had been before. Not corrected. Just restored. A new baseline, she said. The words were quiet. Not declarative. Just placed. Aaron's grip on the tablet tightened slightly. Without us. Mara looked at him. Yes. The room absorbed that. No reaction. No shift in posture. Just understanding settling into place. The aide near the wall exhaled slowly. And the council? Sun finally moved. He straightened slightly, lifting his hands from the table. They'll respond, he said. How? Aaron asked. Sun walked toward the display again. By trying to reassert control. Mara followed, stopping a step behind him. And if they can't? She asked. Sun didn't answer. He didn't need to. The display changed. Not dramatically. One of the 3 original deviations adjusted. A small shift. Less than before. But enough to break the pattern they had formed. Aaron noticed it first. That's new, he said. Mara leaned in slightly. Not from them, she said. From the council? The aide asked. Aaron checked. No authorization tag. Sun watched the line settle into its new position. Correction, he said. To what? Aaron asked. Sun didn't respond immediately. He looked at the surrounding routes. At the timing markers. At the way the system held itself together despite the absence of its previous structure. Equilibrium, he said. Mara nodded once. The second deviation adjusted. Not matching the first, but complementing it. A different angle. A different correction. Aaron's voice dropped. They're cooperating. Mara shook her head. No. Then what? She looked at the lines. They're aligning. The third deviation remained unchanged. For a moment. Then it shifted as well. Completing the pattern. Not symmetrical. Not perfect. But stable. Aaron stepped back from the display. That's new, he said again. Yes, Sun replied. The aide near the wall moved closer. Is that permanent? She asked. Mara considered the lines. No, she said. But it doesn't need to be. Aaron looked at her. Why not? Because it works, she said. The room held that. No further movement on the display. No new messages. No additional signals. Just a system that had adjusted itself. quietly, without instruction. Sun turned away from the display. He walked back to the table and picked up the folded paper. He unfolded it, smoothed the crease again. It remained. He looked at the section they had left on. Inspection reciprocity, emergency override, temporary enforcement. The same lines, the same structure, now outdated. He folded the paper once more, this time more precisely. Then he set it down beside the module. Aligned, not perfectly, but closer. Mara watched the movement. Then she reached out and adjusted the module by a fraction. Not to match the paper, to match the space between them. Aaron noticed. He didn't comment. The aide near the wall stepped back again. The cables remained steady, the load unchanged. The light above the door held its dimmed state. No correction, no return to previous levels. Just a new setting. Sun looked at Mara. She met his gaze. No words. He nodded once. She did the same. Aaron lowered the tablet completely now. Screen still active, but no longer needed. The aide folded her arms again. Relaxed. Not tense. Just finished. Outside the annex, the station continued its movement. Freight lines held their new paths. Departure intervals remained tight. No further delays. No further adjustments. Inside, the room remained quiet. No alarms. No alerts. No urgency. Just the absence of something that had once been necessary. Sun placed his hand lightly on the table edge. Felt the surface. Steady. Mara rested her hand beside his. Not touching. Just close. Aaron stood still. The aide near the wall didn't move. The light above the door remained dim. The vent above the table held its narrower tone. The cables behind the panel carried their hidden load without strain. The display showed a system that had already moved on. No one spoke. No one needed to. The meeting had ended hours ago. The result arrived quietly, without a word, and it held.